Is death and dying something that you've thought about recently? Have you thought of crafting how and where you want to die? Let's talk about it. Sometimes life is going along and something major medically or otherwise may have happened to you that would stop you in your track. And all of a sudden, you start thinking about your mortality. Maybe it was a near death experience or some type of awful disease that has befallen you. So, the topic of death and dying is a topic that might not be comfortable to many. But today, I just want to take a few minutes to take you along my journey of crafting how and where I would prefer to die. So if you're uncomfortable with the topic, this is probably the time for you to click away because we're going to talk about death. We're going to talk about dying. And I don't certainly want you to be uncomfortable. But before we go any further, let me remind you of who I am. I am Maggie Lazar. I am a retired nurse practitioner, and I have retired full-time here in Panama almost 2 years now. And I am also the creator of SWRA, Single Women Retiring Abroad, a group of sassy older ladies who have made a decision to spend the rest of their days here in this beautiful country of Panama and living our best life, creating sisterhood, community, while reinventing ourselves. If any of this sounds of interest to you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. My topic is choosing where to die. I know it might sound a bit jarring, but that was one of the factors that influenced my decision to retire to Panama. My goal with this video is to get you to think along the lines of looking down the line that something that can happen that's inevitable, that should not take you by surprise, that if we have been blessed to still be alive in our sunset years, 60s, 70s, 80 plus, that we should craft an attitude of thankfulness and really engineer our life in the hope that as things happen along the line, along the way, that we wouldn't be surprised, but we would have been an active participant or even the person to craft how those later years will happen. I know it's a little convoluted the way I just said it, but what I'm trying to say is I would like you to start thinking along those lines to assuage your fear of the topic and realizing that death is on a continuum, right? It is a continuation of life, actually, and that it is not something to be afraid of, but it's something to embrace, which makes it easier because, like this person says, there are only two things that are a guarantee in this life: death and taxes. But anyway, because you have to try to find some humor in it, right? So my topic, how I chose where I want to die. And I want to take you through the process that I use. Now, being a nurse, I have seen my share of death, right? And it's funny because I remember the first death experience I had as a brand new nurse. I was assigned to the graveyard shift because in those days, when you were a new grad, you were given the 11 to 7 shift at night. So even if there were a 7 to 3 shift, you had to earn your stripes. You're not going to get that. So I remember getting, as a brand new, they call it GN, the graduate nurse. And I went to my assigned room, and then the patient had passed. And I ran outside saying, she's not breathing. She's not breathing. I mean, listen, I was traumatized for a while. I think it was my very first assignment. And I went to do my round, and the patient had died. And I remember my preceptor at the time, she was patting me on the back. I mean, I was bawling. I was hysterical. And it's just like, it's okay, you'll get used to it. And used to it, I did. Because I remember when I was in the intensive care unit, in the coronary care unit, death sometimes was sudden because I would code some 20-plus-year-old and then all the way to 80, 90s, right? And some deaths, as I went through my career, especially in home care, were horrible. But also I had some experiences of death being beautiful, where we as the nurses would create an environment when we knew somebody was going to pass. And when the family came, let's say they came from out of state, we would go out of our way to make it a peaceful transition for that person. And of course, as I did home care, hospice, we had all kinds of ways people were dying. If you're familiar with hospice, their whole idea is death with dignity and a more comfortable death, right? And I have seen firsthand what happens when someone was not involved in making decisions for themselves. Whether they didn't have a will, there was no advance directives, they had avoided the topic for decades, or if they had, then the adult children were not on board, and sometimes it had to go into the courts. And because I was exposed to all these shenanigans and being the practical left brain person that I am, in my 50s, I started thinking, because, life expectancy has risen over the last few decades. Progress made in medicine, how we manage disease, how we manage emergencies. You go into an emergency room, they're going to do everything they can to keep you alive. No one's going to find you in the field and just say, oh, okay, well, she's going to, reunite with the ancestors. And of course, all that progress comes with pros and cons, right? We're prolonging life, but at what cost? So we living longer. We're eating better. We have better medications, sanitation, vaccines. Oh, I don't know. In 2 years, I may not be one of the things we talked about. But, medicine, vaccines, preventative medicine, food, supplements, exercise. I mean, it's amazing in the last 20 years how much progress we've made into improving health and prolonging health. But having said that, again, one surety is that we are all going to die. Now, I remember talking to someone one time and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be doing all this stuff. And then she did make a point. She said, well, you're not trying to prevent yourself from dying. You're just trying to improve how you die, right? Because now that life expectancy has increased, they have categorized people into, when you're in 40s and 50s, middle age, right? If you're in your 60s to early 70s, that is now called the young old. So I would be considered a young old, but still old, right? From 75 to like 84, it's like you're old, you're getting up there. And anything over 85 is now you're really old. But now we have more octogenarians, centenarians. We have more people living past 100 than we ever have. But sometimes I look at those folks and I'm like, do I really want to live that long? Because again, as I keep saying, this body is going down. Joint replacement, that's what it's big business. Body part replacement, cataracts and a new shoulder, a new knee here and there. uh, Pacemakers to keep that old heart beating. We have a lot to be thankful for, and we're living longer. But the conversation of how that aging occurs is something that is of paramount importance, right? Because I remember a few years ago, they started talking about baby boomers, such as myself. We started to retire at the, age 65, now to be 67. And what they're predicting, the expert, it's like it's going to be a tsunami because the system, the world system, and it's not just in the US. I read about the challenges of having that many people aging and living longer in Europe, in Asia. That is a world phenomenon that we are living longer. We're going to need more services. We're going to have more chronic illnesses, which managing all these diseases costs money. But the other side of the coin is how are those people aging, right? Because demographics, you take a place like Japan, in some areas where the kids are living, they're leaving the home, which might be in the village, to go to the city to work. So you have a bunch of older people being left alone to fend for themselves. And this aging body means you're not able to take care of yourself as well. You have mobility issues. Every system in your body is going to show signs of wear and tear. It's just a guarantee. As I said before, I don't care how much Botox you inject. I don't care how much you stretch. You can do a joint replacement, but it's never the same as the original one, right? So that is putting pressure on societies, right? So if you are a person on this aging continuum, let's say you start 60 plus, you start going down that path, I think it's helpful to start looking down and say, I wonder how I'm going to spend the next 20, 30 years. This is the kind of thinking that I started doing at the age of 55, 60, saying, okay, God has blessed me with health, with all the advances that I talked about a minute ago, the knowledge that we've gained in terms of managing heart disease, diabetes, and everything else. We could live to be 20, 30 more years with chronic illnesses, hypertension, and everything else, but they can be managed with the knowledge that we now have. But what happens when the hips starts failing? What happens when the heart starts failing and you just short of breath, you don't have any energy? What about the big C? I hate to say that word because I don't want it to enter into my sphere at all. What about some people have had like 3, 4, 5 bouts with cancer and they have beat it, they have survived. Amazing. How are we going to live? So I talked about the demographics, because even if it's not young people moving to the city, but we are a very mobile society. And what we were told 20, 30 years ago is that you want to raise your kids and you want to send them off so that the family structure is fractured. People are not living in community. So you have older people left to fend for themselves all over and in every society. So I started thinking about the outlook, right? And it was one of those times of those aha moments saying, I'm still, I don't want to say a victim, but my kids are scattered like everybody else's kids, right? And you all know the pressures that these kids, today's kids, are under. And you make a comment You become cognizant of the fact that, you know, I may be by myself dealing with everything that is sure to come to me. So, how am I going to handle that? So, as a left brain person, I'm very systematic in how I approach a problem and how I come to a decision. So it's like, let's do the research. Let's see what's out there. What are the factors influencing this? What are the options? Option one, two, three. And I did that in family decisions. I did that in business decision. And of course, I did that looking down and saying, how am I going to address what is sure to come? And then other things that I could say about aging alone is the depression, the sense of hopelessness that nothing's going to change. No one's going to come to rescue you. Everybody's busy. We don't want to bother anybody. Let's put some financial pressures in there. The pressure to pay everything in your household and then medication and doctor bills. It's a lot. And some people are tempted to check out. And I have had instances where two aging old adults looking down and realizing it's just going to be really, really scary and a very sad proposition. What does the end look like? And some have decided to check out. That's why suicide is a major concern in the old with multiple physical ailments. So I think when I'm making a decision again, I look at what the facts are. I look at the external, SWOT analysis. I talked about it, right? Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What do I have? What is my strong suit? What are my weaknesses? What are things that are out of my control? And what are the things I can control? What does the financial situation look like? What about option one versus option two? And then what you do as a objective person and saying, okay, one, two, three, based on these factors, option two. And that's why I think those decisions that I have made with the information I had were the best decision I could have made with the information I had, right? And that's freeing though, right? It keeps you from feeling guilty, from saying, I wish I could, I would. No, you made the best decision you could with the information that you had. So it's kind of cold, it's calculated, it's objective. And I don't see anything wrong with that. So please don't feel like it is you being cold or you being heartless because you're thinking of, how do I want to die? How do I want to design my life as I get closer to the inevitable? So I use the same tactical process to think about my sunset years, my retirement years. You know how I feel about the word retirement, right? So how did I come up with the decision to move to Panama, to age in Panama, and to die in Panama? All right, I know I'm using the word death again, and I hope by now you're becoming a little bit more comfortable with the word if you're still watching. If you clicked off, it's perfectly okay. So, are you ready for part two? If you are, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Like Sandra said, click all the little buttons, they all work. She's so cute, it's so funny. As I said, for part two, how did I choose? What is the process that I use to choose Panama? Okay. So I came to visit Panama in 2019. You know, you've heard the story, and fell in love with the country. That spiritual connection, I felt it. And those of you who've had the same feeling, you know what I'm talking about. And you can explain it to someone, right? Because I've traveled to different countries. And I think Panama is the only one that I looked and I'm like, wow, I feel good when I'm here. Oh, some things look familiar. Oh, I could see myself going old here. That was initially, I wasn't there at the point to make the decision. When I decided to early retire, you know, again, you know that story, we can put a link for you to watch that video. It was like, what is the process that I'm going to use to make this calculated decision based on different factors? And what are those factors for my cold-blooded decision-making process? Okay, geography was a big thing. And if you know, I traveled to Africa. I thought I had to, you know, pay my homage to the ancestors and that they were calling me and that's where I was going to be. But the spiritual connection wasn't there. Because remember, what we're talking about here is a bit different from someone who maybe has school-age children. Their factors are going to be different from mine. Because as a young, old, or old person, my priorities are different. My list is going to be different. So geography was important. Not necessarily, and now that been here 2 years, some people would say proximity to the US. Maybe in the beginning, that was something that was important to me. Right now, it's not, because that is not something that is going to weigh heavily, whether I'm here in Panama or whether I'm in Indonesia, for example, if Indonesia was the country that I chose. But it might be important to you, which is fine. Language. Was language important? Yes. And you know, these factors are in no particular order. Okay. I'm just going through them because those are the things that I took into consideration when considering where to spend my last years, my last days. Okay. Geography, middle. Language is important because let's say I want to talk to an attorney or I want to talk to my medical professional. I don't think in the beginning I thought about how important is that, right? But going to a country where they spoke English was very attractive. Therefore, Accra, Ghana, because English is widely spoken. But Panama became very attractive because I speak enough Spanish to get by. I learned Spanish when I was in middle school. I started learning Spanish and I love the language. Even when I, you know, as a nurse, I took classes for healthcare professionals so I could speak to my patient. And then when I got older, I didn't need to speak Spanish that much, but I love the language. I listened to Spanish radio. I watched Spanish television. I just fell in love with it. So that was a plus for me. Would I consider a country like, let's say, Albania or some of those countries? Probably not. Because in my thinking, I'm saying as I get older, I want my life to be easier, not harder. That's me. Okay? Cost of living. Well, that one is a big one, right? Because as you get older, your funds are more limited. And I don't know if you watch some of my other videos where I lost a lot of money in a business failure. And so I'm not rolling in the dough. And even though I've readjusted my life to live a simpler life, a minimalist life, like I don't need a bunch of stuff, right? In terms of clothing and home gadgets, I don't. It's a conscious decision to downsize. Because let me tell you, when I was in practice as a nurse, Sometimes they would bring a patient in a long-term care facility. Something happened. They had a major fall or they had a stroke. And then all of a sudden, boom, they can take care of themselves. And then the kids come, flew in from wherever. And it's like, well, mom, you can't be by yourself. Therefore, you're going assisted living. So in a matter of maybe a few weeks, you taking a woman or a gentleman who's been living in like a big house, and then you squeeze them down to like a small little studio apartment, or they're going to share a room with someone else. And that used to be one of the worst things for this person. And if they had to go into long-term care, where they became a permanent resident of a nursing home, I wish, unless you've experienced that, you just don't understand. Watching the sense of despair in those people's eyes, their depression. I said that 95% of my patients, I'm putting them on an antidepressant because being in that environment, watching people who are probably worse off than you, right? And then you thinking, oh, this is what's awaiting me. And sometimes watching how the staff treat those people would show you it's a tailspin. So these people are depressed, they're hopeless, and it takes a lot to get them out of it. So cost of living is important. And that's why it's also important that the patient themselves or the individual make those decisions so that it's not a surprise. I used to tell people, once your kids fly out the nest and you're an empty nester, it's time to start downsizing. So when you get to the point where you have to go down to that little studio, it's not a shock to the system. But you have to be the one to make the decision and not leave it to your kids to, in an emergency situation, say, oh, mom, now you're going to have to go into the nursing home. And then you're not prepared. You have to prepare yourself mentally. And I know it's difficult to go from where you are, where you were wearing the suits and you were pursuing this career and you were driving the beautiful cars, to now not being able to drive. That was another drama for some people when they had to take the keys. Sometimes we got to play all kind of little games, lying here and there just to take the keys from a 90-year-old with macular degeneration and dementia. We need to take control of our own life, realizing all the things that can happen with the eyesight going bad, not being able to drive at night. I'm not driving here in Panama. I haven't driven in almost 2 years. So am I going to get to a point to say, oh my God, having the key to my car, that is part of my identity. So now if I can't drive, then I'm not Maggie. I've lost something. No. You do it to yourself to say, I don't want to drive in this traffic because it's going to stress me out. Therefore, no car for me, no carro. And I think it's easier if the decision is yours versus being forced to make it. So look at your financial situation and say, where can I live on this much money coming in every single year? Social Security, pension, whatever. But now all of us are like waiting with bated breath to see, is there going to be something happening to our Social Security? Are there going to be cuts? And some people are really, really, really anxious. And another thing to understand too is that once you get to be a certain age and you say, I can't make, nothing I do or say or worry about is going to affect the outcome of what might or could happen. Therefore, why worry about it? Right? And I know it's easier said than done because some of us are nervous willies and we worry about everything. Start working on yourself, sis. Start working on yourself. Okay? You can get help with that. So make sure you live a minimalist lifestyle. Make sure your expectations are not You want a Cadillac lifestyle on a beer budget. You can't do that to yourself. All right. So look at your expenses, look at your income, and try to find a place where you can live within your means. And of course, nowadays, my gosh, I have seen so many videos of people saying, "Oh, why is everybody coming to Panama?" I did a video like that, but there have been more after mine. Things you wouldn't like about Panama. Yeah, they have a bunch of them too. But cost of living is something to be very practical about because some people tell you you can live with this much money, and I'm here saying, really? How? Okay. Do your research and be cold-blooded about it. Don't try to switch the numbers. Don't hope and pray. Cold-bloodedness, okay? Cost of living, rent, utilities, transportation, food, medical, emergencies, socialization, entertainment. Make sure you cover all bases, and they have coaches out there to help you with that. Access to healthcare. Well, this is one that, I made like a short video the other day telling folks that I had switched my Medicare Advantage to United Healthcare PPO. That was before that big thing last week about what happened to that CEO. I'm like, oh my God. But knowing what I know about capitalism and the US, nothing's going to happen to that company. It's going to be okay. All right. But this is something you need to know as you're crafting where you're going to spend the rest of your days. How is the healthcare? What is the quality of healthcare? What about access? What about payment? What about insurance? What about emergencies? These are things you need to look at before. Cold-blooded accuracy. Don't lie to yourself. Listen to multiple people and go to the source and ask those questions. Don't pack all your stuff and move somewhere and then it's like, oops, I can't afford to buy health insurance. What happens if I end up in the hospital without health insurance? We talk about that credit card, having a good credit card, especially here in Panama, okay? Clean up your credit and have enough money on your credit card so that you can pay for your healthcare services. Another thing that is important, that was important to me as I was looking down, where could I lay my head? Where can I die? And how do I live until then? What is the quality of life there? And I know I don't like to talk about certain social ills that affect us brown people, but that was something that was important to me. Wherever I go, I went to Africa, where people look like me. It's like, how am I going to feel on a day-to-day basis, living in this environment? In Panama, again, rose to the top, even though it's not an African country. But when you come to Panama and you look around, a lot of people look like me. I don't stick out. And I said that a lot, but that was important to me. The lack of police brutality and the anxiety of always feeling like you can be a target for anything. So far, that is not a thing in Panama, and I am so grateful for that. So that weighed heavily in my decision to where I was going to spend the rest of my life. The weather. I didn't want to be cold. No, I don't want to be cold. I don't want to go anywhere where in my later years I'm going to have to wear a coat. Because I know as a practitioner that as you get older, you tend to be colder. You need to be a little warmer. So a warm climate was very important to me. Availability of support services. Okay, I talked about how this body is going down, how your joints are going to start to wear out. Your heart's going to start to give out. And once you get older, you are going to need a little bit more help. It's not if, it's when. And I wanted to know, wherever I landed, would I be able to access and pay for those services? Panama. I don't think I thought a lot about those factors when I went to visit Africa, even though I was, oh my goodness, I didn't turn the AC on. I'm getting warm. I did not ask about those services, but I know if you're in a country where people are pressed for jobs, that would be available. What I was not sure of is how fluidly would it work? Could I trust the people who would provide the services? And unfortunately, there was a lot of scamming that I heard about, gringo pricing and price gouging and people overcharging you for things. And I was like, no, no. And because, again, here in Panama, because I speak Spanish, I feel confident that once I understand how the system works and I align myself with professionals and locals, very important, who would tell me the who and how, then I would be able to craft or have access to those services. Now, I've only been here looking at this model of care, even though I was here last year, but I went to South Africa, the Peace Corps, so that wasn't coming together. This year, we're just starting the process with SWRA, getting the ladies together. And it is a constant reminder to myself and the ladies that, listen, we are trying to build sisterhood so that when, not if, you need some help, you need to feel comfortable reaching out and say, sis, I need this. So that's what I'm working on the ladies about, because everybody is really private. And it's like, no, you can't tell me you've been holed up in that apartment for 2-3 weeks, sick, by yourself, nobody checking on you. That is not acceptable. But you know what? All I can do is preach it. It's up to people to reach out. And I tell them that. I said, sis, if you have a problem, it's up to you to say, we are your sisters. If you need something, you reach out. So access to those support services, housekeeping, cooking, laundry, transportation, all these things are available. We have doctors who will make house calls. We have laboratories who will come to your home to draw your blood and do your x-ray if you can't. And then you have the public system. If you're really pressed for money, whenever you have an emergency or a problem, you can go to the public hospital and you're going to pay the fraction of what you would pay for the private hospital. And again, people will say, well, the care in the private hospitals is better, probably, even though it's the same. We have the same doctors who work in the private and the public system. But, logistically, it's you wait longer and maybe the amenities are not what you're used to. But this is where the shift comes in, sis. You have to be realistic, cold-blooded process, the way you think about things. There needs to be a paradigm shift in your thinking, that you're not bougie about everything anymore as you're going down and surely on your way to exiting this place, because it is only a matter of time. All right. And I think the visa process, that's a given. You need to be sure you're here, wherever you go, you're there legally. And there are things about the culture. Listen, if you're making a cold-blooded decision about where you land, where you put your head, where you're going to die, acculturation, that's a good word, embracing the culture of the place where you are shouldn't be top of the list. It shouldn't be such a challenge for you to get used to the mañana mindset, the traffic, the trash, what corruption, whatever it is. You are being given an opportunity to lay your head somewhere as you're on your way out. Don't be bougie. Don't demand things of your new home. That is not your place. You choosing, after looking at all the factors, I'm choosing to say, okay, I think based on A, B, C, D, E, F, Panama rose to the top. Therefore, that's where I want to spend the rest of my days. The rest of it is details. You have more important things to worry about, like healthcare, housing, right? Come on. Prioritize. But the last thing I really want to hone in is what's going to help you with that calculated decision is how you feel about death itself. If you've bought into the concept that we're going to live forever, that if you go to the gym for 8 hours every day, you're going to live a long, I don't even know what a long life would mean. Is it 120? Have you seen any 120-year-old running a marathon? Sometimes I see them running in the 90s and I'm like, I'm ready to catch them. Realistic expectation of aging. And I keep saying that you got to protect your joint. Don't keep thinking you're going to live forever. You are not. I don't care how stretched you are. The inside is going down. So your concept about life, longevity has to be on point. You can live a full life. I remember there was a program I watched on television where they were showing these sassy, very old ladies who were just, they were like acting like mannequins, modeling clothes and everything. And then, they were saying how they were living one day at a time, going to dinner, having lunch with, with friends and stuff, and just dressing up. They were living their life, which was great. But it was funny how the next week I read something to say, oh, one of them just dropped dead. They were living their life with eternity right behind them. So just because you are exercising, I'm eating right, and I'm saying I'm youthful or whatever, don't be surprised if I drop dead tomorrow or tonight. We have to always keep that in the back of our mind. So our concept of health should be, like I said, health is not the absence of disease. Health is managing those diseases, because we're going to have multiple, to the best of our ability. We do what we can, listen to our practitioners, do what we need to do, eat right, hydration, take our supplement, whatever. But always thinking that despite doing all these things, death is a certainty, and that you embrace that. You're not scared of it. You're not dreading it. And another thing, we're not going to talk about what you need to do, but get your legal affairs in order also. Don't allow your kids, your adult children, to struggle with what your choice might have been. Share that with them so they know where you stand. Get your paperwork in order in the country where you've chosen to die. Everything should be in order. Do I have everything in order right now? No, but I'm working towards that. And if I die tomorrow while I'm trying to get it together, well, I was in the process of. That's the best I could do. Because again, you're in a new country, you need to learn the system. Sometimes, most of the time, things don't work exactly like what you used to. So there is a learning curve. You have to learn how things are done. And sometimes one of the hardest thing for us is the patience to learn the new process. So understanding longevity, what that means. So you could live to be 90 to 100, but live a full life. Not full doesn't mean a lot of activities, but do what you can to keep yourself engaged and especially socially um, attached, because socialization is so important. Anything you need to do to keep your mind fresh and learning. That's why I'm always curious. Curiosity is a good thing as you get older. You don't know everything. There's always something new that you can learn. You know, like the ladies and I, we're going to go to a concert. We went to somewhere last night. It's very important to do these things so that you don't become stale. Don't sit somewhere. Make yourself get up and go, but don't overdo it thinking that, oh, if I run 5 miles today, I'm going to live 5 more years. You don't have any such guarantees. Nobody has a guarantee as to when it's going to happen. I personally ask God every day to let me die in my sleep. Let somebody find me 2, 3 days later. I don't care. I really don't relish the thought of suffering through disease. I hope and pray, but I know most of us are not that lucky. So I always say, if that happens, just keep me comfortable. That's why I'm not interested in rushing back to the States for the latest treatment for whatever. 66 years old, I am blessed to have lived this long. Therefore, I accept what will come, but still doing the best I can to be in the best position physically, mentally, spiritually. I know this was a lot to talk about today, but I wanted to share with you my process, my cold-blooded process, taking all the emotions out and just looking realistically, objectively as to what is the best place for me to land, to die. I'm totally okay talking about death. I am not scared of death. I don't relish the thought of pain and suffering. And that's why I embrace the hospice concept of death with dignity and comfortable death. Don't worry about my breathing and any of that. And I do have my paperwork that said, I don't want this, I don't want. You have to be comfortable with those, sis. So I hope you're on a path to thinking. You don't have to think like I do. You don't have to be choosing where you die. This is a conversation I felt was important to have, to share with you. And maybe that's going to lower your anxiety a little bit about what is to come. Death is a certainty. And I believe firmly that crafting and creating my life as I get older, as I get closer to the end, is my responsibility and mine alone. I don't want my kids to make those decisions for me. And I don't want to burden them with making those decisions in my as long as I have my mind. That's why it's important for you to do it now, because you never know. I know some people who I never thought would get dementia and got it. So all the stuff you hear about, read a lot, do crossword puzzle, maybe. I've seen some people who are really intellectually challenged and, animated and well-read. They're still, like one thing my mother always said, we know how we're coming into this world. We don't know how we're going to leave it. So thank you so much for listening. This was a very heavy topic to address, but I don't know why. Last week, it just came to mind. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there is somebody out there who needed to hear those words, that death is a certainty. We need to be comfortable talking about it, planning for it, and crafting the end, our life that can be beautiful, excited, but still with the idea that it can happen at any time. So again, remember to like the video, Share it with people you think might benefit from this topic and this conversation. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I didn't scare you. You know God loves you, and you know I love you. Why shouldn't I? Go keep it real. I mean, how real does it get than talking about death and dying? I will talk to you soon. Au revoir, à la prochaine.